Hey gang, and welcome back. Just a reminder, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com. You'll get 10% off orders over $10 and help with the channel at the same time. This week we have another fun game lined up just for you guys. I am playing my heavily inspired by Cobblepot's Derevi list, Derevi Wizard combo, and I keep an opener with a Plains, Mistfill Plains, Crop Rotation, Island, Rhystic Study, Wooded Foothills, and Sakashima the Imposter. Matt is playing his Gisela Blade of Gold Knight deck and keeps a hand with Nullspine Dragon, Campbell, Zealous Conscripts, Mind Stone, Soul Ring, Needle Spire, and Inspiring Vantage. Sean is playing his Kynaios Tiro deck and keeps a hand with Kazul, Tyrant of the Cliffs, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills, Tropical Island, Hangerback Walker, Rites of Flourishing, and Blind Obedience. Lastly, Trevor is playing his Yidris deck and keeps a hand with Phyrexian Arena, Clever Impersonator, Pernicious Deed, Polluted Delta, Temple of Mystery, Watery Grave, and Mind's Dilation. I win the die roll and start us off. For my first turn, I play a Wooded Foothills and crack it to find a breeding pool. Sean follows my example, playing his own Wooded Foothills and cracks it to find Volcanic Island. Matt plays Needle Spire and passes to Trevor. Trevor plays Temple of Mystery, scries the card and keeps it on top and passes turn. I play Mistfill Plains and pass turn. Sean plays a Plains and casts Blind Obedience before passing to Matt. Matt plays Inspiring Vantage and taps 1 to cast Soul Ring, which comes into play tapped. He then casts Gamble, finding Kiki Jiki, and is forced to discard Darksteel Ingot. Trevor plays Polluted Delta and cracks it, taking 1 to find Blood Crypt tapped. He passes to me. I play an island for my turn and cast Heuristic Study, which in any other game would be great, but unfortunately I missed most of the triggers, so we're going to put a little counter down on the bottom to keep track of that. With nothing else, I pass to Sean. Sean plays his Tropical Island and casts Rites of Flourishing. He then plays Windswept Heath, cracking it, taking 1 to find Taiga. Matt plays a mountain for his turn and casts Mind Stone, which I managed to catch and remember to draw a card for. He then casts Skull Clamp, which I somehow don't draw a card for, and pass to Trevor. For Trevor's turn, he plays a Forest and Watery Grave untapped, taking 2. With nothing else, he passes it to me. For my turn, I play an Island and a Plains, and I then cast my General, Derevi. Derevi enters the battlefield tapped, but she does get to untap a permanent when she enters, and Breeding Pool gets untapped. I then tap Breeding Pool to cast Wild Growth on it, and pass to Sean. Sean unfortunately doesn't draw into any lands even though he draws 2 cards, and he casts Fairy Artisan before passing to Matt. Matt plays Boros Guildgate and casts Chaos Warp targeting Sean's Blind Obedience. Sean shuffles the enchantment in, and unfortunately for the rest of the table, he reveals Authority of the Consuls, which is actually kind of worse. With nothing else, Matt passes to Trevor. Trevor responds to Matt's end of turn by casting Fact or Fiction and chooses me to make the piles. I give Trevor the old 3-2 split, and surprisingly he lets Cyclonic Rift go to his graveyard. For Trevor's turn, he plays an Island and Cinderglade untapped before casting Darksteel Ingot. He then pays 4 to cast Skyshroud Claim, finding Overgrown Tomb and Breeding Pool. Thankfully I remember that Heuristic Study is a thing, and I draw a card and Trevor passes turn. For my turn, I play a Plains and a Forest, and I cast Willbender, which comes into play tapped, and Sean gains 1 life and a token copy of it. Moving to combat, I swing Derevi at Trevor for 2, and when the damage is dealt, I use her ability to take Sean's Fairy Artisan thanks to Willbender. During my second main phase, I cast Thrasios, which comes into play tapped, and Sean gains another life. For Sean's turn, he plays a Forest and Misty Rainforest, and he cracks the Misty Rainforest, taking 1 to find an island. Sean then casts Karametra, God of Harvest, and for some reason I decide I don't want to draw even though I'm aware of it. This confuses Matt, but nonetheless he starts his turn. For Matt's turn, he doesn't have a land drop, but he does cast Herald of War, which gives me a token copy of it, and Sean gains 2 life. With nothing else, he passes to Trevor. For Trevor's turn, he plays Bloodstained Mire and casts Mind's Dilation. I respond by casting Crop Rotation, sacrificing a Forest to find Gaia's Cradle. Trevor then passes to me. I then tap Gaia's Cradle to activate Thrasios' ability, and I reveal Glacial Fortress and put it into play tapped. Trevor also responds by cracking his Bloodstained Mire, taking 1 to find Stomping Ground. I play an island for my turn and cast Quest for Renewal, which triggers Trevor's Mind's Dilation. He reveals the top card and finds Ponder. He casts the sorcery and, liking the 3 cards on top of his library, puts them back in order and draws a card. Moving to combat, I swing the token and Fairy Artisan at Sean. Derevi introduces herself to Matt's face for 2, and Thrasios says hi to Trevor. This lets me put 4 quest counters on Quest for Renewal, and with the 4 Derevi triggers, I take Herald of War, Sean's copy of my Willbender, and I untap Breeding Pool and Derevi. I then cast Mystic Remora and pass to Sean. Sean plays Flooded Strand during his first main phase and cracks it, taking 1 to find Plateau. Sean then casts Kynaios Tiro, which triggers Karametra, but it also triggers Mind's Dilation. Sean reveals the top card, but unfortunately it's a mountain, and Kynaios and Tiro come into play, and Sean gets to find a forest. Sean then casts Selfless Spirit, which triggers Karametra, allowing him to find another forest, and I get a token of the spirit, which replaces my token of Kynaios and Tiro. This also has the added benefit of giving Sean a life. I then realize that all of my creatures should be untapped thanks to Quest for Renewal, except for the token that just came into play, and Sean moves to his end step, drawing a card. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a land to play, and all of his opponents choose to draw a card. Matt plays a mountain for his turn, and he and Trevor do some colluding, with Trevor showing him a very critical card that he plans on playing soon. Matt then casts Baneslayer Angel, which triggers Trevor's Mind's Dilation. This allows Trevor to cast Arc Bond, targeting my Willbender. With Mind's Dilation resolving, Matt gets to put his Baneslayer into play, and I get a copy of it thanks to Fairy Artisan. This gives Sean 2 life. For Trevor's turn, during his first main phase, he plays Sunken Hollow and Smoldering Marsh. He then nicely organizes his mana and casts Pernicious Deed. Thankfully I remember my triggers, and Trevor doesn't pay 1 or 4 for it, allowing me to draw 2 cards from Mystic Study and Mystic Remora. Trevor then sacrifices Pernicious Deed, where X is 5, and Sean sacrifices his Selfless Spirit to make all of his creatures indestructible. I then tap Gaia's Cradle, generating 7 green mana, and I pay 4 of it to activate Thrasios' ability. I reveal Stifle off the top and draw the card. With the Deed trigger still in the stack, I pay 1 blue to stifle the trigger. This triggers Mind's Dilation, and hoping to hit a counterspell, Trevor unfortunately finds Knight of the Reliquary. Trevor casts the Knight, which comes into play tapped, and I get a token copy of it. And this gives Sean 2 life. With his plan to wipe the board unfortunately having gone awry, Trevor then casts Clever Impersonator, which comes into play as a copy of his Mind's Dilation. For my turn, I play a forest and cast Recruiter of the Guard. This triggers both copies of Trevor's Mind's Dilation, and he hits Aven Mind Censor and Grand Arbiter Augustin IV. He decides to leave Grand Arbiter in exile though, and with Aven Mind Censor now under Trevor's control, I only get to look at the top 4 cards in my library. I find my own copy of Clever Impersonator, which isn't what I was looking for, but at least I found something. Feeling pretty salty over the fact that Trevor's using my own stuff against me, I swing all of my creatures at him for 12. With all of my triggers, I untap my lands, and I take back my Aven Mind Censor and Knight of the Reliquary. Moving to my second main phase, I cast Clever Impersonator as Recruiter of the Guards, and get to go find the card I originally wanted, Azami, Lady of Scrolls. I then cast Azami, Lady of Scrolls, and finish my turn with a Cryptolith Rites, passing to Sean. On Sean's untap, I get to untap all of my creatures, and Trevor is less than impressed. For Sean's turn, he casts Mirari's Wake, which triggers Trevor's Mind's Dilations. Trevor hits Throne of the God Pharaoh and Azorius Signet, which he's happy to cast. Sean then moves to his end step, drawing a card, but doesn't have a land to play. All of his opponents choose to draw a card. At the very end of Sean's turn, I tap 6 wizards to draw 6 cards thanks to Azami. On Matt's untap step, I once again get to untap all of my creatures. Matt then plays a mountain and Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. During his first main phase, he casts Day of Judgment, which once again triggers Trevor's Mind's Dilations. Trevor hits Ghostway and Past in Flames, which unfortunately doesn't do very much for him right now. I respond by tapping 2 wizards to draw 2 cards, and then finding Counterspell, tap 2 creatures to pay for the 2 blue cost. This also triggers Trevor's Mind's Dilations again, and he hits an island and Fauna Shaman. He chooses to cast the Fauna Shaman, which comes into play tapped, although we kind of forget about that, and I get a copy of it. This also gives Sean 2 life. Matt then casts Lightning Greaves, and passes to Trevor. At the end of Matt's turn, I once again tap a bunch of wizards thanks to Azami, and draw a handful of cards. For Trevor's turn, he plays a Reliquary Tower and taps it to cast Sol Ring. Trevor then taps out, casting Villainous Wealth where X is 9, targeting me. Unfortunately for Trevor, he hits mostly lands and mana dorks, with the only exception really being Baral. Not really wanting to cast any of them, as it'll get me a token copy of at least one of them, Trevor keeps them all in exile and passes turn. At the end of Trevor's turn, I am able to draw 6 more cards thanks to Azami, and I'm able to find a card that's about to finish out the game. During my first main phase, I cast Intruder Alarm, and Trevor exiles Birthing Pod and Enlightened Tutor off the top, casting both. He finds Followed Footsteps with Enlightened Tutor, and while he's searching, I cast Stonybrook Schoolmaster, a critical part in the combo. Sean unfortunately doesn't have a counterspell, but he does have the next best thing, and casts Boros Charm, dealing 4 to me, and allowing Trevor to exile the top 2 cards of his library, hoping to find something. The cards are Blind Obedience and Oracle of Moldiah. Unfortunately, this isn't enough to stop me from drawing my entire library, and resolving Laboratory Maniac, and then tapping 1 wizard to win the game because I can't draw a card. Game review time. So I think pretty much the critical turning point in this game was when I lucked out and was able to get a Stifle off the top. Yes, I was in control of the game for the most part up until that point, but I think the board wipe would have really set me back. This game really taught me to love Mind's Dilation, and I'm really hoping to work it into a few decks, because it seemed like a lot of fun with a lot of random elements to it. It didn't hit any critical cards for Trevor, but he was able to get 2 of them going, which was a lot of cards being exiled whenever you cast a spell for the first time that turn. Matt was unfortunately left in the dust, as his deck was heavily creature-based, and Sean pretty much shut it down with Authority of the Consuls and Blind Obedience since early on. It also didn't help that I was getting a copy of whatever he was casting, and I was able to swing with it before he was, as I got to untap before his next turn. Sean's Kynaios Tiro deck was a lot more aggressive this game, and Rites of Flourishing did a lot of work for everyone. It was fun to see it in action, and Sean has done a good job of tweaking it since its initial inception. Unfortunately, all of those tweaks didn't help him out too much when he got stuck on lands, but that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. Please be sure to tune in every Monday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video, with a second video popping up sometime during the